We're talking about the ride or die theme in urban culture, and I'll go into a little bit more of that. But first, would you mind telling our audience a little bit about who you are and what your relationship is to urban culture in Canada?
I'm an assistant professor in the RTA School of Media at Ryerson University. And I started back in the early 90s DJing with my sound crew and started on radio in 98. And then I co-founded the Bigger Than Hip Hop show between 1998 and 2015. I think it started out as a solo hip hop show. We changed the name, probably by 2000 or so. And then in 2010, I was part of developing Northside Hip Hop Archive, which is sort of our digital platform for archiving Canadian hip hop.
Fantastic. So you have a very close-knit relationship with hip hop and the urban culture in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time, with records and with artists and in the background of, performances and recording mixtapes, all that sort of stuff. So, I've spent a lot of time listening to a lot of things that a lot of people haven't listened to.
Awesome. Okay. So you make actually the perfect subject to speak to about the ride or die narrative. And that's something, that's a narrative within the hip hop culture that I really wanted to explore. When I talk about the ride or die narrative, I'm thinking mostly of the romantic relationships that are referenced in movies like in urban culture, like Love and Basketball, and in songs like from my era, Ja Rule's Put It On Me, Jay-Z and Beyonce's Bonnie and Clyde song, obviously Eve, from the Rough Riders. And just wanted to explore that a little bit more. And before we even got on camera, when we were just chit-chatting off set, you mentioned that this theme actually can be traced back to the 60s, as far back as the 60s, maybe even further.
I definitely think there's a connection between the ride or die theme that we see today in romantic relationships and thinking about your crew and thinking about loyalty in the streets and loyalty to one another. In informal ways and informal ways, informal sort of affiliated ways. And you think about like when Eve came out with Ride or Die, it was really this moment hip hop had become the #1 selling genre in 1998, surpassing country music in America. And hip hop was on center stage. And at that moment, Eve really bubbled up this idea of loyalty in intimate relationships and thinking about how in a relationship, thinking about how one can demonstrate their loyalty and what does that sound like, what does that look like, what does that feel like in hip hop. So the idea of being ride or die is about this sort of unwavering kind of loyalty to an individual, whether they're a superstar or not a superstar, whether they have a crew or they don't have a crew, but this sense of being true about your relationship. So when I think back to the idea of crews, and you think back to some of the earliest graffiti artists, like Tacky 183 and other folks that were bombing subways, you think about you're in a train yard, it's nighttime, it's just you and your crew, and you have to depend on your crew to survive, right? To not get arrested, to not step on the third rail, all these other things matter. So you have to be a cohesive unit out there. And that idea of having a crew, having a family, having someone in the streets to protect you that's not part of your immediate family, absolutely critical to the formation of any kind of crew or sense of community in hip hop. Yeah.
So ride or die, I've been looking at it from only one lens, and obviously we need to look at it from a much wider lens because it encompasses the crew, as you mentioned. Yeah. Now I'm really interested to get your opinion on, why this particular theme, so whether it be ride or die as a romantic partner or ride or die as, my boy or my best friend, I'm really interested in why you think this is such a staple in urban culture and in hip hop, and why it isn't talked about the same way in, let's say, pop or country or even rock.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a couple ways to think about it. One is the idea of celebrity culture and being true, right? So the idea is most people believe if you become a superstar, then the people around you are usually fake, right? Or they're yes men, or they're interested in you because they're chicken heads or they want money or whatever. So this idea, at least in hip hop, of trying to stay loyal, being one of the most valuable non-material things that one can have, you find it being sort of a strong theme or a strong narrative that can continue to pop up, largely because when hip hop now is on center stage and there's so many opportunities for people to become celebrities, becoming a celebrity actually dilutes the product, right? It makes hip hop pop, it makes hip hop more commercialized, and it makes it less innovative, less avant-garde. So it's almost like a way of protecting the evolution of the culture, the growth of the culture, by making sure that the people around you are there, not for cameras, but for pushing the art form forward,
okay.
right? Testing the limits of any kind of graffiti style, or testing the limits of a b-boy or b-girl cipher, making sure that you're interested in what it is we're doing as a unit, as a creative unit, as a group of artists trying to express yourself in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Another way that to think about why it's connected to hip hop and not as much as rock or not as much in country is also to think about where hip hop comes from, right? Hip hop doesn't come from some sort of institution; it comes from kids outside in the street, right? And whether you were DJing in a park, or if you were breakdancing, or if you were doing graffiti, loyalty was one of those things that you couldn't buy, right? If you're impoverished, if you're racialized, if you're on the margins, the immaterial things have a greater value, right? As opposed to, say, pop music, where people kind of know when you're making popcorn music that everyone around you is there because you're making popcorn music, because you're a superstar. But when it comes to hip hop, I mean, you think about a crew like DICT, right? All of those guys went out and had amazing careers, right? Rest in peace, Big L. But the essence of the crew still stuck. Like, they had an album come out a year or two ago where, you could hear Diamond D, you could hear Fat Joe all together after they've some of them have become these big stars, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea of the crew and that sense of loyalty is what pushes the culture forward in terms of artistic creativity. And I don't know if other musical genres rely on that in the same way, right? If they do, it doesn't become something that is highly visible lyrically, or it doesn't become a theme that one can sort of attach themselves to. On the romantic side, though, when you think about Ride or Die, is also this idea of, in an era where divorce rates are at 50%, in an era where relationships can be, especially celebrity relationships, can be very fleeting and temporary, the idea of coming back to Ride or Die has so much grasp, or so much
like weight.
So much weight,
yeah.
Largely because these are the things that cannot be obtained. Mm-hmm. You can't go out there and just obtain loyalty from the people that you want around you, the people that you want to keep in your circle, right? So the idea of being Ride or Die in these relationships is like, look, all of this stuff doesn't really matter, because I'm on the number 2 bus with you if I gotta be, right? Yeah. So those are the kinds of things that I think, the different ways that one could think about the theme of Ride or Die. In other musics, like in drum and bass and dubstep and these others, lyrically we're just not exposed to the amount of lyrics, so we don't really see that kind of theme. But I know, like, crew is crew, right? Like in any kind of creative practice, authors that are writing fiction books, they have crews, they just don't call them crews, right? Their friends read their books before they get published, and your crew will tell you if your verse or if your mix is off or if your verse sucks, right? Yeah. There's a multiplicity of ways, like from generations, like from the 70s, 80s, 90s, to start thinking about why this matters so much.
So it sounds like Ride or Die / loyalty, like that's synonymous at this, like through our conversation, I've discovered they're synonymous. When you think Ride or Die, it obviously means loyalty, and that's a theme that's been ingrained in the urban culture from when urban culture started to, I guess it was birth. No one can really put a timeline on that, but from its birth to its growth, it's been constantly weaved in there. Maybe we didn't even notice it, and it's come out in different ways. Yeah. Whether it was like through crew love, and then I think romantically it was popularized in the 90s, like late 90s. Yeah. Well, what do you think?
Bonnie and Clyde, I think that came out around the same time as Eve's joint. But yeah, we weren't, 95, 96, even 97, those kinds of conversations weren't topical. They weren't, what major artists would be discussing.
Yeah.
So, when Jay-Z and Beyonce do sort of their tracks together, that really sort of charts another direction, where people start to talk about this ride or die theme, like male, female, intimate ride or die theme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think it's an important theme in urban culture, and one that, should continue to breathe, we should continue rather to breathe life into, whether it's through music, movies, arts, dance?
Well, I mean, when we think about it romantically, like that, I can't imagine how an artist could be successful in doing what they do with an unstable kind of emotional state. Let's put it like that, right? But I think it's only important if people are willing to spend the time to analyze and to take it seriously and to pay attention to what it means to have a crew, what it means to be down with your crew, and how they impact or influence what you do, right? And I'm thinking specifically of DJ crews, right? And in the early '90s and mid through the mid '90s, teams like the X-Men, teams like the Invisible, Scratch Pickles, these are all turntablist teams. Their work couldn't have created what they created if they didn't have a loyal team that was going to be honest with them. You know what I mean? That was going to praise them when they did good, and that was going to critique them when they wanted them to do better. So I think it's absolutely critical for the culture to continue to be innovative, to continue to push artistic boundaries, and to have people that are going to be there when you're broke, and to have people that are going to be down when you flop, or when nothing is going on, or when they have new kids, or when they have a new romantic. So I think it's really critical on the creative aspect, because largely the transition into breakdancing and into b-boyism is coming out of street culture, is coming out of youth street gangs, right? And ride or die is literally, it's funny, you could say ride or die, like I'm going to be down with you, or till the end. But in all reality, in 65 and 68 and 69, 70, 71, if you were 12 or 13, 14, and you weren't riding with a crew, your life's in danger, right? Like someone's gonna roll up on you, and you could be in gang territory, and something could happen, right? So it's interesting, because it would have been, die or ride, right? Back then. And now you would think about ride or die and be like, yeah, I mean, there's that sense of loyalty to an individual, to a group process, to doing art together, to growing and learning together. To me, it would be absolutely critical in all kinds of relationships going forward, for people just to be healthy.
How about your favorite ride or die song?
Oh, wow. For me, my favorite, let's call it ride or die crew track.
Okay.
Right? Is Monolith. Monolith has a song called At the Top.
Okay.
And then TOP is an acronym. And the whole song is about them having success in the music industry and remaining a crew, and seeing each other succeed. And that level of loyalty for me is just, it's at the core of being able to highly function in a creative world, in a world of celebrity, in a world of consumer culture. So Monolith at the top.
Monolith at the top.
Yeah.
And TOP is an acronym.
Yeah.
Do you know what the acronym stands for?
No, this is, okay.
My bad. We'll put it in the notes. It's all good.
That song probably came out in 1999 or 98 or something like that. So it's like